Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Hancock, and along with my friend who also thinks this whole professor thing is a pretty great gig, Patrick Curran, we make up Quantitude. We're a podcast dedicated to all things quantitative, ranging from the relevant to the completely irrelevant. In today's episode, our 150th and the last of Season 5, we hear from 5 people at different stages of their academic journey who share some of their potential concerns about a career in academia. Along the way, we also mention death scrolling, Patrick's fuzzy blanket, slow motion ballerina, Twix, academia infomercial, Twitter admins, micromanaging, pilot training, young Turks at the gate, stupid shit like this, chalk holders, administrative tennis, Nietzsche, Eeyore, Caitlin Clark assists, blizzard of information, kick the can, when the streetlights come on, and water goggles. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
As you're aware, you were the equivalent of my mother when she would clip out New York Times articles and mail them to me, even though she knew that I had an electronic subscription myself. Mm-hmm. Over a 4.5-year period now, you have done that with screenshots of Twitter posts.
I do?
Because I don't have any social media. I did have Twitter on my phone. I just didn't know how to use it. And you also threatened me with bodily harm if I touched any settings or anything.
Absolutely.
So I'm actually going to need to rely on you more because I scrubbed my phone entirely of Twitter.
Are you under legal investigation?
So, no, I am not.
No, not this time.
There were 2 reasons.
Okay.
One is I have a routine, and after dinner, I just want to clarify, I'm not an 82-year-old man, but I make a cup of herbal tea, and I go on the back deck with my book, and when it's cool, I have a big fuzzy blanket, and...
Where are my favorite slippers? Okay.
And I would find myself out with a book and my tea and doing this death scrolling on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's just this La Brea tar pit, of sucking me in where they're going to find my bones in a million years. But that wasn't entirely what pushed me away. Uh-huh. The bigger problem was there would be, the little videos that are in there. And the algorithm somehow pegged me as a DIY guy. And I kind of am. I like trying to fix my own things. I like puttering around the house because I am an 82-year-old man.
Right.
And I would watch these things about how to drywall a patch and how to replace an outdoor water spigot. Uh-huh. And then I guess the algorithm will occasionally throw in just a random thing. And there was a little video of a girl, I don't know, she was maybe 10, in front of a water fountain outdoor. Mm-hmm. And it was a super slow motion ballet jump. And it was really beautiful. This kid was obviously a very talented ballerina for a 10-year-old. Mm-hmm. And with the water in the background and the fountain, it was really beautiful.
Nice.
I watched it a second time. And then I started scrolling again. And there came a dancing teenager, and a dancing teenager, and a dancing teenager. And I had a brain aneurysm, and I deleted Twitter. I broke my SIM card. I put my phone in the toilet. And I am now off of everything forever.
I see a SWAT team outside the window of your office.
So anyway, you are going to need to clip out the newspaper articles and mail them to me.
Okay. I have to say, though, you're not missing a whole lot with respect to Twitter or X or Twix or whatever the heck we're going to call it. Yeah, it feels so, I don't know, like such a downer. With regard to our world, and by our world, I will put a big circle around that and say the world of academia, there's just so much negativity being conveyed on there. And it bothers me, honestly. It bothers me as someone who is what you might call an academia nut, right? Someone who loves academia, couldn't imagine myself choosing something else. There's so much gloom and doom. And I know that Twitter is not a random sample, right? People who have something to say, go and say it. But I do worry that it kind of perpetuates a lot of those sentiments and maybe dampens people's enthusiasm about something that otherwise you and I are just pretty damn excited about.
For the first time in entire season 5, I agree with you.
Okay, well, this is getting cut then.
Wow. Yes, exactly. I completely agree. And I have two reactions. One is it just makes me sad whenever anyone is struggling with something and feels a lot of frustration and angst and disrespect. Yeah. And it's just an expression that people are finding themselves in a situation that is just not bringing them satisfaction.
Yeah.
The second part that worries me are that people who are thinking about this as a field say, holy crap. Why on earth would I volitionally go into that field given all of this that's going on? And it could significantly dissuade people from going into academia, whatever form that might be. Maybe a tenured line, maybe a teaching track line, maybe a research professor. Mm-hmm. And that makes me sad.
For sure. I had the opportunity last week. I was visiting the University of Missouri, got invited out there by our friend of the pod, Wes Bonifay. Also got a chance to hang out a bit with Doug Steinley, editor of Psych Methods, an all-around great guy.
Both of them are.
Oh, they are. Honestly, there are many wonderful people who are quantitative methodologists, both across education and psychology. It's just a really great place. And I had a chance to sit down with about a half a dozen graduate students and listen to them musing about the careers that might be ahead of them. And I have to tell you, there was a lot of hesitation in that room about careers in academia. And I don't want to go out there and be all evangelical about academia. I happen to like it. It's the right fit for me. But I do worry when people are making decisions based on a few observations that they've had or a few worries that have really just been sitting inside them, and they're not getting an opportunity to hear a broader perspective. And it made me kind of sad, right? So I tried to provide some balance there. But I also thought that that might be a nice thing for us to do a little bit more broadly. That is, not sell people on academia, but maybe to help think through what some of their concerns might be and try to temper those a little bit with some of our experiences. We've had a lot of experience by now, right? Many decades between us.
And like any job, there's a goodness of fit element. Some people, an academic career may be a better fit, some may be at a less ideal fit, but at least we want people to be able to make a fully informed decision before going in. Because no job is perfect. Nothing out there doesn't have stresses, strains, underpayment, disrespect. Yep. There's some universals, but absolutely there's some unique elements that hold in academia and not in other settings that might be problematic and difficult. To be clear, Greg and I are not running an infomercial on academia. We are not in any way undermining the angst that people are talking about on Twitter and in other places. These are real, valid concerns. What we worry about is the next generation coming in is going to say, well, screw this. Why would I ever do that?
And Patrick, being off Twitter now, said, hey, Greg, why don't you send something out on Twitter? So I've become his little Twitter admin.
It's
hey,
true.
Greg, can you do this? Hey, Greg, can you post that? So in the spirit of that, we sent, when I say we, I mean I sent.
I told you to do it, yes, so I get co-credit.
He doesn't micromanage at all.
Don't say that.
Oh, God, he's texting me. So we sent out a tweet asking people about if there are certain anxieties or concerns they had about careers in academia, whether it's people who might be looking ahead considering that as a career or people who have just started into it and they're starting to wonder about certain things that are going on. And we had a lot of really thoughtful responses from people. And what we did is we asked 5 people to provide us some audio clips. We're going to play each of those audio clips and try and respond to some of the issues that each of them has brought up.
And there's a bit of a professional development angle to it, because what we're going to do is have people express their opinion, and then Greg and I are going to repeat their opinion using different words, but pretend as if we had the insights ourselves.
Well, that's academia in a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can kind of wrap up right there. All right. So should we listen to the first one?
Hello, my name is Jen Traver. I'm just wrapping up my second year in the quantitative psychology program at UNC Chapel Hill, and I'm very excited to be pursuing a career in academia. But something that makes me nervous is the feeling that I don't really know what I'm getting myself into. I think by the end of my program, I'll have amazing training in research and I'll be able to effectively contribute to my field scientifically. But I have no idea how to do things like set up and manage a lab, or develop an advanced graduate level course, or mentor a PhD student so that they can have their own successful career. And these all feel like really important things. So I'm kind of nervous that I don't really have any training in how to do them. And kind of hand in hand with that, I'm at the point in my grad school journey where I still feel really passionately about what I'm studying and lucky to be spending all of my days just learning and doing research. And I've seen a lot of professors become jaded, and I'm worried that in 20 years I'm going to wake up questioning all my life decisions with no passion, just spending hours every day replying to emails. So those are my academic worries. Thank you for listening.
Wow, she took kind of a turn there at the end. So wait, where is she seeing people jaded, Patrick? What program is she part of?
So I am incredibly fortunate where Jen is currently my advisee, and she's in our quant program here at Carolina. And let's cut to the last point first. Yeah, you are going to be spending hours doing emails, and just deal with it.
Yeah.
See, that's my supportive advising style. I mean, she is absolutely spot on, and it is a bizarre part of our field where the job that you go into in academia, you get virtually no training in most of what you're expected to do. You are trained in research, you are trained in foundational topics and quantitative methods and research methods and whatever else you might be studying out in the world. But when you think about, all right, welcome to your new job. Here's your office. Here are your keys to the building. You need to teach an undergrad class. You also need to teach a graduate class. You're picking up 2 advisees. You are going to need to manage your lab. Oh, and here's your startup funds, and you're going to need to do budgeting and hiring and firing. Enjoy your fall semester.
Welcome. It is true that there's so much of what we do. In fact, I've complained about this before. The whole institution that you will work at is run by people who have virtually no training in the thing that they are doing every single day, right? The administrators have no training in administration. The people who go into the classroom have no training in teaching. And as a new faculty member, you are going to have to do a lot of things that you weren't trained to do. Now, if you are fortunate to have a wonderful mentor like Patrick, and I say that with complete sincerity, I give him grief all the time, but you really couldn't ask for a better mentor. Patrick is going to do everything that he can to show Jen what these things look like, but he's not going to take her into the weeds of his lab management. The best I think he can hope to do is to let her see that these things are going on. And in his case, he's an extraordinarily capable person on all of these fronts. See that these things are doable, and probably, my guess is, provide Jen mentorship that's a little bit more in the weeds when she finds herself in this situation in the future if Jen decides to go into academia, which I hope she does. So we want to sort of emulate that this can be done, but I don't think it's even possible to show you everything that you are going to need to do and that you're going to face when you get out there. And I'm okay with that.
I am too, because you can't teach every aspect of every situation that you're going to encounter. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes think about pilot training. You give a set of skills and experiences, but you don't necessarily train every possible scenario you could ever encounter. Mm-hmm. You have a base set of skills, you have a base set of knowledge and experience, and then as the world throws things at you, mm-hmm. that you draw on that foundation of skills where, okay, in a flight simulator, I never had this particular thing happen.
And now the geese are going to fly into your engine and you're going to land it on the Hudson. Yeah. So imagine that you've been hired as an assistant professor and you have been assigned Patrick as a mentor. So you're not being thrown into the deep end without any water wings. You're being placed in an environment with a thoughtful, caring senior person who can help provide you that on-the-ground insight that you need. And that's in addition to whoever is back at whatever program you came from, who's offering you continued advice as part of your academic family. So the view that you have as a student is that you go out into this world with no training in all of these things, which can be true, formally speaking. But a good academic environment is set up to ease you into that. When you earn a PhD or whatever the terminal degree that you are earning, it doesn't mean that you know everything. It doesn't mean you know everything in terms of content. It doesn't mean you know everything in terms of how to do that job at the next level. But it does mean that you're capable of learning these things, that you are capable of figuring these things out. And so we try to structure the environment, I hope we do, thoughtfully so that your transition is a learning opportunity.
And that dovetails on to her really important final point, which is she loves what she does now. And she does. I see this every day, and she is an absolute joy to work with. But she has a fear that she's going to lose that over time. And I think that might be a general issue that cuts across a lot of things. If you're going to be a physician, if you're going to be a high school teacher, is how do you keep the joy and the passion? And I would say one of the unique aspects of a career in academia is you have more options available to you to keep that passion kindled. And the reason is we're blessed much of the time with having flexibility in how we spend our time. Mm-hmm. And so I think about it as we have opportunities to reinvent ourselves. So you go in as a young Turk at the gates and you're going to get grants and write papers, and you can do that for a decade. And then maybe you say, I kind of know how this show ends. So you can throw yourself into teaching. And then when you've done that, you can say, I'd like to help other people do their work and go into administration. John Nesselrode is a titan in the field, and he and I were talking once, and he had moved into administration. He said this lovely line. He said, I've done my own work, and I'm at a point in my life when I want to help other people do theirs. Mm-hmm. So you can move into that kind of role, and then you can do stupid shit like this, where we're at our 150th episode because we wanted to.
Yeah.
And so I think the fear of losing your passion is a clear and present danger, but that academia is actually uniquely well-suited to allow you to pivot and to turn to new things to keep that joy and passion alive.
Doing stupid shit like this. Excellent. Thanks, Jen. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Jen. Now, get back to working on that project.
Uh-huh. All right, who do we have up next?
My name is Bronson Hui, Assistant Professor of Second Language Acquisition from the School of Languages, Literatures and Cultures at University of Maryland. One of the key challenges in academia I see is that the inflation of expectations for scholars in general, be it larger grants, more papers, and better journals, in a way, for people seeking a job or tenure, is a moving target to achieve. One reason for this might be that many scholars just feel insecure. For example, assistant professors are told to look at the CV of those who have just been promoted to get a sense of the expectations for tenure. What happens is that people try to run the extra mile just to make sure. In this climate, where mentoring students interested in faculty positions, what should mentors do? I know what I can do. I can push them harder. I can have better, earlier integration of research into coursework. I can also incentivize productivity through the summer. These can help, but is it the right thing to do? Are we driving the inflation even higher? What about work-life balance? People can burn out, be subject to mental health issues. Some students see academia as a competitive environment for life. This perception can also mean that we are losing talented and hardworking people. There is certainly a balance to strike. I hope I'm not discouraging anybody. I'm just in the spirit of how to make things better. Thank you for your time.
Let me preface my response. Bronson is one of the most thoughtful, caring, promising young scholars out there in his area. And I love that he embeds in all of that, how can we make things better? He wants to see himself as part of the solution. So the way that this problem, and I'll put problem in air quotes because I don't know that it's entirely a problem, but the way that you have described this before is something your dad said, that they're moving the goalposts.
Yep.
And the idea of moving the goalposts is that you keep having to do more to score, whether it is for someone who is seeking tenure, whether you are competing for a job out there. And so it feels like it's just this ever-increasing frenzy. And in some ways it is. Do we have to do more today? Yes, but we're not doing it in the same world that the people who are doing less were doing less in. So I want to make sure that as part of our conversation, we try to temper this, making sure that we're not doing an apples and oranges thing here. Does that make any sense to you?
It does. And it's just what you're saying. There's this evolution. And also, is this unique to this day and age in academia, or is this a constant that's been around a long time? I was on the job market in fall of 95, 96. And I interviewed, I forget where, it was some state university, a major state university. And we were out for the dinner and the chair was there and he said, I got tenured on your CV. Mm-hmm. All right, so we're talking 30 years ago, exactly the same thing was happening. But there are other knobs being turned as well. Some are good, so there's team science, right? There's not kind of one person with a candle in their cabin writing papers in isolation. There's teams of people where a research group might be working on 5 papers simultaneously. Different people have different roles, and instead of having one publication, you have 5 publications. But there is also a plethora of outlets for publication that did not exist when you and I came up through the system.
That's right.
You could count on 2 hands the total number of places that you and I could submit a paper, and half of those were like not ideal anyway.
Yep.
Now there are dozens upon dozens of varying quality, and there are just more opportunities that you can generate published research.
Completely right. Now, I don't want to undercut Bronson's concern because you are still doing this work, right? But there's much less sense that you are doing it alone, and there's much greater opportunity for you to get it out there. And once it's out there in one of these dozens of possible outlets, there's honestly a lot of self-promotion that goes on anyway nowadays, where someone will post a paper or they'll put a preprint up or... I mean, it's funny. You will see some people posting like, I'm almost finished with this paper. And you're like, wait, does that mean it's published? No, they haven't. It hasn't even been peer reviewed yet. But there's so much self-promotion that goes on. And there are positives to that too, right? Because there's a journal that I might not be aware of. Someone makes it known in social media. I get wind of it. I think that's great. It comes to my attention. And honestly, most of the time, I don't even remember what journal it's a part of. And I think that speaks to the idea that the marketplace out there brings it to our attention. And it becomes, I think, a little bit less important what the outlet is. Now, you're still going to be judged by the quality of the outlets overall, but people are just much more aware of things that are going on. And that is a huge difference in the world in which people are trying to achieve now than the world that people were trying to achieve in back when Patrick was out on the job market.
And that is a good thing, to be super clear.
Yep.
That there aren't 5 journals that are the gatekeepers of what they unilaterally determine to be important versus not.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. Person X has a paper on topic Y and I want to go read it. I kind of don't care where it is.
Yeah, that's right. So one of the things that I want to emphasize here is that these are different worlds, right? And I don't think it's quite a fair comparison to go straight off the numbers, but it is an environment now where we are more aware of all of these possible outlets. It is an environment where, and I love this part, there's so much more training available to be able to do things than there ever was before. There are workshops in methods, there are workshops in publishing, in all aspects of science. There are all kinds of things that you can go get access to and learn on your own. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there to support you. You are not doing these things on your own. So circling back to Bronson's concern that there seems to be a lot more going on and it seems more and more of a race, at least we can temper that by saying we are in an environment that provides a lot more support and opportunity given the new location of the goalposts. Thanks so much, Bronson. Patrick, roll tape.
Roll tape.
My name is Melissa Keith, and I'm an assistant professor of industrial organizational psychology at Bowling Green State University. And I sometimes worry about what higher education may look like over the next, say, 20 to 30 years. I often see reports that there are declines in college enrollment at the undergraduate level, and this is, of course, accompanied by some societal angst surrounding whether higher education is even worth all the money that people put in. And then at the graduate level, I see pushes for fee-paying students over supporting our graduate programs that are more traditional, where we actually fund them to come to graduate school. And at the political level, I've also seen these pushes for more legislative control over really central issues such as what we teach and what we research, and even the sacred cow, tenure. And as someone with a hopefully really long career horizon, I just sometimes worry what this means for my job security and whether certain things I love about academia, especially the autonomy, will just cease to exist eventually.
She is absolutely right.
Yep.
We have no idea what life is going to look like in this career in 20 or 30 years. And I'm not sure myself, even in 20 years, what my position is going to look like. But what's interesting to think about is when you and I got in the game in the 90s, where we are now was 30 years in the future. Mm-hmm. And the job you and I are doing right now is only loosely associated with what we came into the game with in the 90s. It is anxiety provoking. We don't know how we're going to adapt and evolve ourselves to fit into a system that's adapting and evolving.
You know what all this reminds me of? When I graduated, my mom gave me a chalk holder as a gift. So I could go off and be a professor. I still have the chalk holder somewhere, but to me, it is beautifully symbolic of something that felt very professory back then, but we have no need for it, right? But all aspects of our job have changed. Now, the thing that Melissa raises is whether or not some of the freedoms that are associated with that will become compromised in the process, right? Whether or not, for example, the autonomy that we have around things that we can choose to research will be infringed upon. Whether tenure has a future. I can't speak to all of those things, but what I can say is those were all conversations that I heard back when I was starting too.
I remember 30 years ago, people talking about was tenure going to end or not. And so that has been hovering around. However, she is right that for decades, I don't remember legislative interference in how we do our job. Mm-hmm. And I do think that's a new development. I do think that there, in some areas, is a spirit of anti-academics. But also, I view a lot of these things kind of as a tennis game. Administration hits a ball over and we hit it back. Mm-hmm. And I just see this as another kind of hitting the ball back, that there may be new rules, new guardrails, new expectations. And so we adjust in the way that we see fit and we hit the ball back and say, I'm not going to do that.
And that to me is one of the most important points. When you are new in a career or haven't even started in a career, one thing that you don't see yet is the ability that you have to change and shape that environment. As a new assistant professor, my main concern was fitting into the way things were being done. But now I have really come to realize that the environment that I am in has my fingerprints all over it. There are times where, as an administrator, I have said no to things that have come down and tried to protect my faculty. So I look forward to a world where someone like Melissa is in the driver's seat, helping to shape what's going on, helping to fight fights as needed, changing as needed, because you will have some agency in this environment. That was such a thoughtful comment. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right. Can you cue up our old friend coming up next?
Hello, Quantitude listeners. My name is Sally Larson, and I am a senior lecturer in the School of Education at the University of New England in Australia. I'm going to try to explain to you the thing I worry most about in this job. So we know that academia has long had the publish or perish model. The pressure to publish seems to have resulted in an enormous proliferation of papers in every possible research area. Many of the papers that are published will hardly ever be read by anyone. And not to be too down on the whole enterprise, but some of the papers that are published are not particularly good, or they contain flaws that affect interpretations and conclusions. In the last few years, we've seen the advent of AI text generating software. It's very likely that an exponential number of papers will continue to appear. Some of these may in fact be written by AI software and not people. So the problem for me is this. In the face of an ever-increasing volume of academic publications, the quality and rigour of which often remain unknown, how can we be sure that we know what we think we know? How do we know what to believe? And how do individual researchers who are trying to do the best we can do compete with sheer numbers? If research is about making meaning in the world, how can we hope to make meaning in the midst of such confusion?
Sally, that is a downer. Oh my gosh. All right, well, let's try to cheer Sally up a little bit. Patrick, do you have something positive to start us off?
Yeah, I don't think that's a downer at all.
Really? Okay.
No, not at all. I think you're wrong, Hancock.
Okay.
Sally, I love your question because I don't think often enough in day-to-day life do we ask these broader questions of why. Why do we exist? Why am I doing this? Why do I get up in the morning? It's a Nietzsche kind of what's the purpose of it all? And what I love about it is it gives us an opportunity to raise these deep existential questions and then try to answer it. Right? Because there are two ways that we can move from this. One is an Eeyore, why bother?
Oh, we'll never make
There's
it.
no reason to do it, is I'm going to go home. And that's one thing. But the other one is, well, why do I bother? What's the point? It prompts you to go for a run, sit on your thinking log, and to say, why do I do this? What do I derive enjoyment from? How can I make a meaningful contribution to the scientific literature? And how can I separate the wheat from the chaff? Because she is spot on. How do you know what's important? How do you know what's well done? How do you choose what is going to inform your own work? And then how do you walk out in the blizzard and try to carry a beacon so that people find you and read your work? Not for selfish, egotistical reasons, because if you work hard and do good work, you want it to influence how other people are thinking about a particular topic.
I'm going to take a different tack in response to Sally, and that is I am going to say, absolutely, there is a ton of crap out there, and I don't completely know how to sort through all of it. But what I will also say is that I contribute to the crap too, and here's what I mean by that. I am a growing, developing, learning person all the time. And that means that I have written things that at the time I thought were okay. But as I have grown, I look back on it and I say, that really wasn't so great. I know so much more now. I mean, I think we should go into this in earnest and wanting to do good work. But I don't think for a second that every time I step up to the plate, I'm going to hit a home run. In fact, I'm going to strike out a lot, but I'm still going to keep swinging at those things. And I view all of the work that I do, and I view the work that other people do as these increments in our science. And one day no one will remember maybe anything that I've ever written, but I'm still comfortable with the idea that maybe one day someone will stand a little bit taller because they're standing on some things that I helped to lay down along the way. So I'm okay with this idea that there's stuff out there that's questionable. I think that things have always been of mixed quality, but I'm still going to go out there and keep trying to grow, to be better. And I think most of the people in academia are trying to do the same.
I'm seeing in my mind's eye just this blizzard of information out there that we're walking through. And I have a couple of thoughts as belaboring the sports analogies, but I will go to basketball, which I am not a big basketball fan, but of course I'm a Caitlin Clark fan.
Absolutely.
Who for outside the country is the record-setting women's player in college and is going to the women's NBA. And she had a really great line in a post-game interview. They were talking about her stats and the points she scored and her assists. She has a very high number of assists. And what that is you somehow get a ball to a teammate who scores and you get credit for doing that. The teammate gets the point, but you get credit for making that point happen. And they were saying about how remarkable she is with her assists. And she responded and said, well, I don't get the assist if my teammate doesn't make the point. Mm-hmm. And I loved that because what she was saying is her teammates were the ones who were scoring the points, right, and that she's not going to get the assist if the teammate misses the basket. And I think a similar thing happens here is we do the best work possible. And what we want to do is to try to get that in the hands of somebody else who then can do something with it themselves. And so how do you get your work out in the world and get it noticed? And we alluded to this in a prior part of the conversation in this episode about being an advocate for your work. But then you also have to figure out how to identify what work out there in the blizzard is of quality and meaningful and potentially impactful in your own thinking about a problem. And you know how I do that is I have a mental list of people where if they write a paper, I'm going to read it. Mm-hmm. And I think if I see a paper by John Willett or Judy Singer or Steve Raudenbush or Ken Boland or heaven forbid you, I think, oh, I'm going to read that paper. I think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And there's still, as Greg alludes to, variability, but you start to think about whose opinion do I value out in the world and making sure that I'm seeking out their help in forming my own thinking and my own work. But at the end of the day, Sally is exactly right. This is frustrating. It is overwhelming. Sally, thank you for raising that because it makes me sit on my log and say, what is the meaning of all of this?
Yeah. And one thing I know in all of that is that Sally is one of the people that we want in academia doing thoughtful things. So I'm glad she's out there thinking about this. Thanks a lot, Sally.
All right, we are down to our last one. Are you ready, Hancock?
I am ready. Our final person is someone who has been with us since the very beginning of the podcast, Tuomo Virtanen. That's my best Finnish. He is at the University of Jyväskylä. So go ahead, take it away, Tuomo.
In academia, there's a tug of war between university, family, and social expectations. During our PhD studies, we were not taught how to balance it at all. There's no training for managing our time or academic freedom. It's tough to limit work hours, given the inspiring work environment of academia. It's like trying to stop kids from playing when they are having fun. Personally, I'm passionate about education and statistics, but for sure my wife isn't thrilled about my long hours. I worry about younger colleagues juggling high expectations, especially those with young children, balancing family life, high-quality publications, career uncertainty, travel, and research funding is no easy task. By the way, thanks for running Quantitude. It's so entertaining and helpful, although I do get some strange looks when riding a bike to the office and laughing loudly while listening to Quantitude on earbuds.
That's sweet. Yeah, work-life balance. That seems to be something that haunts a lot of people who are maybe in academia and worries a lot of people who are thinking about it.
You know what I love is very often when the conversation of work-life balance comes up, and it is one of the most important ones to consider, because this goes all the way back to Jen's first contribution at the beginning of this conversation of how do you kindle and protect the passion and love that you feel, and a big part of that is maintaining a work-life balance. What I love about his comments is most of the time that I have conversations with more junior colleagues or graduate students or postdocs about work-life balance, it's really a negative thing.
Right.
How do I string barbed wire because I have to publish, because I have to prep a class, because I have to do this administrative stuff? And that's really important, and that's a super real thing. There are huge demands on our time that interfere with that. What I love so much is what about the work-life balance where it's like stopping kids from playing a game?
Yeah.
The interference is because you love it.
We do.
One of my fondest memories from growing up as a kid in Colorado was for a number of years, we played in the summer after dinner, kick the can. So it was daylight until 9 o'clock at night.
Wait, was this during the Great Depression? You're going to have to tell us what kick the can is.
I don't know if any of you have a version of this, but what it is kind of a giant game of hide and seek. And you put the can out on a driveway. It's just an empty metal can.
Okay.
And somebody is the searcher. Everybody goes and hides. And the person goes around, and if they find somebody, they're in jail. And then the winner is if the searcher gets everybody who's hidden. However, if somebody runs and kicks the can, then everybody in the jail is freed and the game functionally starts all over again.
Okay.
And these would go for hours. They would range over a city block of houses. They were gargantuan games. And the rule for all of us was you had to go home when the street light came on. Mm-hmm. And we all just dreaded that light coming on. And literally, it would flicker on and you would hear in bushes and trees, "Aww." And what I love about his description is it's like at some point the streetlight comes on and you gotta go home.
Yeah.
And so it is a very real issue about the balance of work and your outside life. But I just love that notion that part of the thread of that balance is because we love doing what we do.
Yeah, for sure. So I will say, I think you're better at work-life balance than I am, honestly. And even if that's not true, just let me harbor that illusion. But I do know that I am bad at work-life balance. At least I have the appearance of being bad. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I might be grading papers at 11 p.m. Who wants to be doing that? I might be writing an academic paper at 5:30 in the morning. Who wants to be doing that? Why am I doing those things? Because I'm going to every athletic event that my kids have. I'm going to every music recital. I am staying home, helping to take care of kids from time to time. So for me, we might be doing weird things at weird times, but I'll tell you, this career has allowed me to be so much more invested in my family than, let's say, my dad ever was. And I mean that at least structurally, because my dad was all in on family. But he went to a job early in the morning, came home in the evening, and whatever happened with us happened with us. So this job has a tremendous amount of flexibility, and I think that I am leveraging that flexibility in ways that you can't do in other positions. And for me, that is the work-life balance, that I am so much more engaged in things that I value, but it means that I have to move some of the pieces around. But over the years, I'm getting better at teaching, and so my preparation takes less time. I'm getting better at research, so some of that takes less time. I'm working with and training wonderful students, so I'm able to achieve more in research. So I think that work-life balance is just a different animal in academia. And for me, I am okay with it.
And to be particularly clear for more junior people who are yelling at their steering wheel right now, Greg and I both understand that we are senior in our field and also have more leverage in having those things move during the day, right? But what is really important to recognize also, as Greg already said, you get better at the job over time. And that work-life balance becomes easier as you go. You get better at teaching, you get better at research. But you know what I found as time went on is I started to better understand when was good enough. Mm-hmm. That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges of our field is if you're prepping a lecture on whatever the lecture is, it always can be improved upon. The best TED Talk ever given could be improved upon. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to lean back and say, this is good enough. And I think that as you progress in the field, you're better and better able to identify what that line is to say, I could put another 3 hours in after dinner, but nobody in the room is going to recognize the difference but me. So I think part of it is getting better at the job, but part of it is also kind of stringing out what your expectations are. And then part of it is there's a puzzle-solving aspect to our career. So I've never been a big TV watcher. I'm not anti-TV. I like watching stuff, but I've never been like a sit down on NBC Thursday night and watch 3 hours of TV. But I do enjoy puzzling through like some SAS code. Right? So I go back to my computer after dinner, and yes, I'm working on something for work, but I'm trying to get this do loop to work with a macro because I feel like I have an idea that's going to make it work and I want to see if it does. And it's fun.
That's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle. And when I get it working, I have some satisfaction from that.
Yep.
And so is that work or is that not work?
Yeah.
I don't know. Nobody say, well, if you find a job you love, you never work a day in your life, right? Okay, that's crap. Never let anybody tell you that. But it is true that if you get enjoyment out of writing some R code to do a clever little thing that you had an idea while you were out walking your dog, go do it because that's satisfying.
Well, let me ask you then, if we can just pull back, maybe inspired by Tuomo's comment about playing, do you have some reflections on academia, positive or negative things that you would want to leave people with?
Honestly, I don't have any wise looking down on all of this reflections on the career. I love my job. I love what I do. I love working with the students and teaching. I love being part of the process where I help a student in some small way see something that they hadn't seen before. Being part of that first time. So I know you're really involved with your kids as well. One of my favorite things with my kids growing up was sharing part of the joy of first things with them. So I remember being somewhere on vacation and putting on water goggles and looking underwater, and one of my kids coming up and screaming, "I saw a fish! I saw a fish!" And it was just this remarkable thing. It was like, "Oh yeah, sweetie, you saw a fish." And I love that with students in the job. Just being part of standing next to them, looking with goggles on. That's what I derive my most joy out of.
I love that. I will share some things that I like as well, but I want to start with what I think is a fair thing to say, and that is that I don't think academia is the right place for everybody. And I don't mean at all that you're not worthy, because that's not the case. I just mean in terms of fit. Just like there are tons of jobs that are not a great fit for me. You know, if you need a job with tremendous structure where everybody is telling you what the next project is, when it's due, and all of that, academia is not that place. If you don't like being in a job where your ideas get criticized, sometimes wrongly, but sometimes rightly. Our ideas are criticized all the time. We write them down in a paper that we pour our heart into, we hand it off to a journal, and we have people tell us what's wrong with them. If that's hard for you, and I absolutely know it's hard for me sometimes, then maybe academia is not a place for you. And that's okay. And I will say, I might like a little more structure in my job sometimes than academia has. I might prefer a little bit less criticism sometimes than academia has. But if you had asked me, let's say when I entered college, what job I would really like, my answer hands down would have been, I would like to be a student for the rest of my life. I thought that that would be the greatest gig to have someone pay you to just learn lots and lots of things about lots and lots of things. And I could not be luckier than I am now because I'm in a place where I am always learning new things. And I get to contribute to that pool of knowledge. And as Patrick said, we get to help other people have these ahas. And sometimes the aha is the equivalent of seeing a little fish under the water. Sometimes an aha is a big fish, like understanding how statistical methods are all part of some larger umbrella, right? There's little ahas and big ahas. But being part of that learning, being part of the generation of knowledge, and getting other people excited about that, I would not change that at all. It is right for me. All right, Patrick, what do you think? You got anything else?
I got to tell you, Hancock, this is our last episode for the year, and I feel like it's the last day of classes. I always love that, both for the obvious reason of just being done with the semester, but also of having accomplished something as you've had, 30 lectures and everything in your blood, sweat, and tears. And part of it is, we've built and I contributed and blah, blah. A lot of it is, for the love of heck, we don't have to record anymore for a while.
Well, okay, so it is episode 150. It is the last episode of this season, but I will tell you, I love doing this with you. If we if we didn't love doing this, we wouldn't keep doing it. But you said one time that back when we were sitting on that bench in the Inner Harbor in Baltimore, if I had told you that we would be doing this 5 years from now,
Oh, I would have stood up and walked away.
current out. And yet here we are talking about getting together summertime, thinking about the topics for the coming season.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving some joy to me in this academic career, for being able to do this silly thing with you. I love it, and I love working with you. And I'm so grateful for everybody out there who's been with us. Thank you.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Same back to you. But mine more is thank you for the listeners. Thank you for hanging with us. We so appreciate the time. We really do derive a lot of joy out of this, and we owe that to you. So thanks much.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever they go for work-life balance and career advice from two people who spend 20 hours a week doing a podcast that goes largely unrecognized by their home institutions. You can also follow us on X Twitter or Blue Sky, and visit our website, quantitudepod.org, where you can leave us a message, find organized playlists and show notes and syllabi, search for past episodes, and other fun stuff. And finally, check out our cool Quantitude merch, which makes great graduation gifts, from redbubble.com, where all proceeds from non-bootleg authorized merch go to donorschoose.org to help support low-income schools. You've been listening to Quantitude, the podcast that has been leading you to question your life choices for 150 episodes. Hey, it looks like we've got some voicemail. Let's see what we have here.
Hi, this is Joe Biden. Wow, 5 seasons. Who would have guessed? Really makes you wonder if podcasts should have term limits too.
Hello, this is Charles III. By the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith. Wait, I forgot why I was calling. Camilla?
Hi guys, it's Jiffy. I forgot my key card. Can you let me in the building? I texted Patrick, but I didn't get a response. Thanks.
Hi Greg and Patrick, it's Taylor. I just wanted to congratulate you on your 150th episode and finishing season 5. Amazing. And don't forget, you promised we'd get to hang out this summer. And bring Jiffy. Travis totally wants to party with him.
Hello, gentlemen. It's Morgan. 150 episodes. I would have never believed it. Quantitude really is a masterclass in how to compensate for a lack of knowledge and talent with sarcasm, outdated referential humor, and barely interesting personal anecdotes. Well, whatever works.
Hi guys, it's Jiffy again. Tom at security says one of you will have to come downstairs to let me up.
Hello. We've been trying to contact you about your car's extended warranty.
Hey guys, The Rock here. Congrats on your 150th episode and wrapping season 5. Looking forward to another blockbuster sequel next year. You two must be making serious bank.
Hey Patrick, this is your brother Dan. Congratulations on finishing season 5. It doesn't suck nearly as bad as I thought it would. Dad would be proud. Mom would probably still be embarrassed though.
This is most definitely not NPR.
Come on, guys. Guys?